Yo, 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 yo. Today I thought I'd talk about how different styles of plugins can affect your mix. So like certain plugins by different manufacturers are designed for a particular purpose and also end up sometimes having a particular sound, or the opposite, being very kind of clean, and that is their sound. The ones that come to mind here are Slate plugins. You know, the ones in their everything bundle, you know, they've got like kind of Neve modeled EQs, SSL modeled EQs, you know, a few compressors based on like, you know, 1176s and, you know, Blue Stripes and whatever, the Blackies, that kind of thing, right? And what I've noticed in my mixing is I was using them a lot. So like, pretty much every track I would just go to the everything bundle, like just because it's so simple, you know what I mean? You can just load up a compressor, EQ and everything like that, and it's just boom, like that. But what I noticed is that, you know, I was probably mainly using the SSL one a little bit more, and what I noticed is that that particular analog modeled SSL EQ, I think that, I don't know, it sounds good, but I think that the top end, like particularly like when you're doing a high shelf boost from like maybe 7.5 or 5K or something like that, it's got this, brittle isn't the right word, but it's got this slight amount of distortion in it. It's the same with the Neve one. It's made to be like that, you know what I mean? And the more you push it, the more it gets kind of like distorted and gritty up there. And what I've noticed is that, you know, if you're doing that on every track, things can get a little bit too gritty. And then you get like kind of, you don't have much definition in your top end. It gets a bit kind of, it all starts melding together as this one kind of distorted kind of like lightning storm happening above your mix and stuff like that, which is fine. But, you know, it's something to watch out for. And maybe if you're doing, you know, low shelves with the Neve EQ and the, what is it, the everything bundle. I don't know if woofy is the right word, but it get like, or pillowy, like just this very kind of like indistinct low end and stuff like that. And if you keep on boosting that, it sounds like a kind of very cloudy kind of low end and stuff. So I guess what I'm getting at there is like, you know, certain plugins have a certain sound, and if you overlap and overlap and overlap and overlap on track after track after track, it really builds up and you can end up digging yourself into a hole. It's the same with Decapitator by Soundtoys. I love that plugin. I love that plugin. But the key is subtlety. Like if you're using it for just a little bit of tone shaping, you've got to be very subtle with it. Like if you overdo it with that plugin and use that a lot, it's the same thing, you know. It's got those kind of like, I don't know exactly the technology behind it, but it's like modeled off, you know, tube amps or whatever. Valves, like different selections, and the more you build up, the more you get this kind of overly warm, kind of like too much glue almost, so that there's not enough separation and stuff like that. Especially if you're mixing kind of like music with a lot of low end in it, it starts to get very indistinct and things like that. So be sparing. And on the other hand, you know, the Waves CLA bundle, like the 1176, the LA3A and the LA2A, well, CLA 2A, 3A. It's the same with them, you know what I mean? These analog kind of modeled things. You just got to watch out, is what I'm getting at, and use them sparingly. And I guess what I'm getting at is like, know what each compressor is good at and know what each EQ is kind of suited to in terms of an instrument or what you're going to do. So like, you know, I guess they're all kind of diverse and they can work on quite different levels. Like an 1176, you can smash that on pretty much anything, can't you? But if you want to get different tones and stuff like that between different instruments in your mix, you're not going to do any favors for yourself by slapping a black 1176 across every single track, are you? Like the snare, the kick drum, the bass guitar, the vocal, the guitars, like because it can act as glue, but then the more you do it and stuff like that, it gets so glued together that it's indistinct. So, you know, I think maybe what I like to do is vary it up. So, I guess I like, at the moment, I'm kind of enjoying that Waves DBX 160. It's really cool. You can do some cool things with drums there. So I'm probably generally using a mixture between 1176, DBX 160, and just the Renaissance compression by Waves as well. They're probably my go-tos. And mixing and matching and stuff like that. And then when I go over to like a bass guitar, or honestly, sometimes I still am using an 1176 there. But your release times and stuff like that can get some different things happening. Slower release on a bass guitar or something like that. And then on a vocal, maybe a Blue Stripe 1176, and so on and so forth. But and also that's another thing. All these tape emulation plugins, you got to watch out for them as well. Because like, if you use too much of it, it's the same thing. You just get this like beyond glue, this mushy sound the more you use it. So be sparing, be very sparing. Because the thing with these kind of plugins, like any plugin when you first start out, is like, you want to boost it or use it to the point where you can really, really hear it. I think that's what happens when you first start out. But no, stop doing that. Like, you have to train yourself and really use your ear, where use it to the point where you can just hear it and then back it off, because you don't necessarily want to be able to hear it. Okay, you're not using it to hear it. You're using it to give a certain type of feeling. And it's the same with delays and reverbs. Like, you hear all these mixes by kind of like, people that are just starting out, and the reverb is so loud, and it's like, it doesn't sound good, you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, it sounds good for some kind of like lo-fi stuff and everything like that, but too much reverb's just like, bleh. Like, especially if it's like just one reverb drenching the whole mix. That's another thing, selective reverbs, use a few different ones, you know what I mean? Instead of the same thing on everything. It's probably good to have a kind of glue reverb in your mix as well, though, like a longer one. I think that's a pretty standard thing. I like doing that anyway, very subtly. What else is there? Yeah, so like, I don't know, blah, 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 like, I guess what I'm just getting at is like, different plugins have particular sounds, and if you overlap them, you're actually going to end up with your mix very much sounding like that plugin, and that can be good and bad. I think it can be good in the analog world, where like Chris Lord-Alge, he just uses an SSL desk, but I reckon there's a heaps big difference. I've never used an SSL desk, but I reckon there's a heaps big difference between having a whole desk and using, all the channel strips and everything to mix, versus using one SSL modeled plugin in your mix, because every channel strip in a desk is going to have a slightly different sound. It's the EQ and the compressor and everything like that. But the Slate one in particular, it's like, it just has a sound, and then you're putting that over everything else. So if that's the color red, everything's just going to have a little bit of shading of the color red on it, and all adds up to go blah, like that. You know what I mean? So I think doing it in the box, you've got to be a bit more careful, and probably, be a bit more sparing, and don't jump for an analog based plugin straight away. It's probably even better to start off with a kind of cleaner one, like the Renaissance comp, or even the Avid like EQ7 or whatever. I reckon that's a boss EQ, particularly for cutting. Maybe not so much boosting in the high end in particular. I think it gets a bit weird up there, but for cutting, it's awesome. It's so easy. So yeah, like maybe do a bunch of your EQ work with a clean plugin, like Renaissance comp, the Waves like Q series, or the Avid E7 or E3, I can't remember what it's called, and do some cutting and everything like that, and clean your track up. And then if it needs some analog warmth or some of that gritty top end from like the Neves kind of bass plugins, whack it in, you know what I mean? Things get pretty punchy and like aggressive when you start using like the Neve and SSL stuff, so it can be really good. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is be sparing. Okay, just a rant about like the significance of different plugins, and be careful and do your research and everything like that, so you actually know what you're applying in your mix, rather than just like, oh, I'm gonna put this on, blah blah blah. See, dudes and girls, I'm not sexist.